Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline Magazine, and welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where each week I invite a panel of experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's going on in their own individual business, their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. I've got a fantastic panel today. I've got Chris Creed, the CEO of Creed Foodservice, Claire Thayers, Ambassador Happerley, and Chris Nelson, the newly elected Police and Crime Commissioner. Thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks today, guys.
Morning.
Morning.
Well, let's kick off with the headlines first of all. I've got the national newspapers here. So first of all, the Times, multiple fatalities after Plymouth mass shooting. The Daily Telegraph, Paras sent on rescue mission to Afghanistan. Do we really want to go back? Have we just come out? Britain and US evacuate Taliban advance on Kabul. Also, GCSE show widening gap in attainment. The Daily Mail's 6 shot dead in Plymouth gun horror. The Sun, Brit jihadists join the Taliban. The Mirror, 6 are shot dead in bloodbath. The Citizen, All Stars top marks after a testing year. They focus on the school results in the local area. The Western Daily Press, NHS waiting list reached record high, 5.4 million in England. And that's all I've got. That's all I've got here. Unfortunately, my favourite, the Daily Star, wasn't there. But hey ho. Let's move on to you, Chris Nelson. Thanks ever so much for joining us, sir. Right, what would you like to start with?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I've looked through the papers. The first story that I wanted to talk about was the one you mentioned about the Paras on rescue mission to Afghanistan. And this is a story close to my heart. I served 31 years in the army. I didn't go to Afghanistan, but just watching the news as to what's happening in Afghanistan is dreadful. And in this story in the Telegraph, General Dennett, who was the chief of the general staff, I used to work for him for a couple of years, he made the point. He said, "I'm afraid Joe Biden has triggered this because while the much reduced US-led NATO force was still in Afghanistan, we were putting the backbone into the Afghan army and they were holding off the Taliban. Because he has decided to cut and run, effectively, it's triggered this situation." It's very sad. I mean, to be honest, the whole Afghan story thing is a dreadful situation. It's gone on for 20 odd years. There's no simple answer. So we'll have to watch closely what happens there.
As an ex-military man yourself, then, I mean, do you agree in them sending in the Paras now? It's only it's supposed to be a short mission, isn't it?
Well, I think very much so. The Paras will have been on standby, able to be deployed within hours, and that's to protect people that are still in Afghanistan from the embassy and things like that, to make sure they can be extracted. Because obviously the Taliban's moving so fast. If you don't have ground forces there, there's an acute danger that within a few days people could be attacked, and it's not happening in the slow way I think most people thought. So I've got no problems at all about the Paras going in there. I suppose it's a much bigger argument to say, well, what have we been doing there for the last 20 years and did we achieve very much? And I think that's the bigger debate issue. I've got my own doubts over that.
Well, as an ex-military man myself, we're probably on the same page there. I'm just going to ask the rest of the panel, actually, just very, very quickly. We'll go over to Chris Creed. Chris, should the Paras be sent in? And what's your general view?
Well, my understanding is that they've gone in to rescue the Brits that are over there. So if that's the case, then I think they should be there. Should we be involved in any wider conflict? I'm not so sure. I don't know enough about the situation over there, really. I mean, it's terrible what's happening, but as Chris said, I don't know what the solution. We've been, fiddling around with this for the last 20 years. So I don't know what the answer is, to be honest, Mark.
If I was an ex-forces person who served in Afghanistan, I mean, I'd be just weeping, really, to have those nightmares and comrades that you would have lost, served, and maybe still suffering from, severe mental illness or severe, disability from being shot at or hurt. Claire, what's your view on it, please?
I'm the same as the two Chris's, really. Obviously we have to go in and look after the Brits, and I think that's, number one priority. But as to the rest of the muddle and the mess and the 20 years of it, I don't know enough really to comment on it. But from an outside perspective, it befuddles my head, really, the millions and billions of pounds that's gone into this, and the lives that are lost. And have we got any further forward? I don't think so.
Probably not. I mean, big nations have lost. The Russians couldn't do it. The Americans couldn't do it. And I read somewhere that the Chinese are in the background as well, pulling the strings. But I wouldn't be surprised there. Let's go back over to Chris Nelson. Chris, what else have you got in the papers, please?
While I'm on the Telegraph, another story that caught my eye to do with the World Health Organization inquiry into COVID and the bat infection in the Wuhan lab in China. It's interesting that, we're talking about China quite a lot these days. And apparently a Chinese scientist may have started the pandemic after being infected with the virus while collecting bat samples. And that's the head of the World Health Organization investigation has said. I think that's a story that will rise in importance. At the moment, we've got the shootings locally and Afghanistan, but I think that coronavirus story will become more significant. Certainly, if you look at social media, there's plenty of people that have suspicions about how COVID has started, and the Chinese are very careful to control the debate. Because obviously, if it's pinned on them, I suppose the next sequence of thoughts will be compensation for all the thousands, or the hundreds of thousands of people that have died around the world due to what possibly may be negligence and incompetence.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Chris. I'm going to go over to Chris Creed now. Chris, what have you picked out? By the way, thanks ever so much for joining us again. Punchline Talks.
Pleasure.
After we had our big interview. Which I really enjoyed. What have we got in the papers, please, sir?
I've gone slightly food related and maybe a bit more light-hearted, I think. So the first one is the don't blame the ever-expanding waistline on the march of time.
Are you talking about me now?
And me.
And me. And what they've proven is that the metabolism doesn't really change between the age of 20 and 60. So as we get older, the excuse of our metabolism has decreased is not true. So unfortunately, that's an excuse we can't use now. Apparently, it's the highest in the age of 1, and then from the age of 20 to 60, it stays about the same all the way through.
Wow. Okay.
So
I spotted that story as well. Fascinating story. And I think as I've got older, I've realised the more calories I eat, that's the real nub of the problem. And if I eat too many calories, I'm done for.
Okay.
Well, it's calories in and calories out, isn't it? I think, if you do enough exercise and eat properly, I think it's fine. But I think we probably get a little bit more sedentary as we get older.
Isn't it such a shame that these things aren't taught in schools, more? I know you're a big advocate of that, Chris, and all that you do with Creed, but educating our youngsters to eat properly, my goodness, couldn't that save the NHS a fortune?
Yeah, well, I think exercise as well. I think that plays a big part as well. And I think that, I don't see that being spoken about enough. I think exercise is really, really important. I think it will be more and more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going forward.
What else you got in the papers there, please, Chris?
Well, the other one again is probably I guess related to it's kind of a funny headline.
Lift it up a bit. So
again, it's around about the clucking disaster for KFC. It's warning of chicken shortages, and not because there's not enough chickens, but not enough lorry drivers. And we're certainly suffering from that situation as well, as everybody is. And I think that is, unless things change, unless we get more drivers in, that's the one.
What a headline! That's such a good headline.
It is. I think we have to do something about that, and whether that's allowing more foreign drivers back in, or increasing the number of tests and CPC training that we have in this country, we have to do something about that, because it is becoming a really, really big issue.
And for a company like yours, that obviously as the marketplace picks up now, you get busier again. Is it as bad as they say? I mean, some of the companies are offering thousands of pounds of bonuses to keep the drivers.
Yeah, we've reviewed our pay structure and adjusted it accordingly. And I think that, you know, when you think the average age of a HGV driver now is 55, and the number of young people coming into it is very, very small. So, yeah, it is an issue, and I think it will become worse.
And that goes back really to the A-levels results and all the kids who want to go to university. I was talking to business people, and they're really, really worried that enough kids aren't actually going to go into the workplace. They're all going to go to uni. And I hate to say this, do degrees in things that we don't need. I was talking to someone the other day, you know, she's a geography student, just, you know, got a degree in geography. What are you going to do with that? I'm afraid that doesn't really translate actually into a career, or not much into a career. Same as people who come to me, you know, they've got a degree in English language rather than a degree in journalism or a degree in marketing. And I think there's a really, really big problem that we're in some ways, we're letting too many kids go to uni. Then who's going to do the work? Well, it used to be Phil.
Totally agree. It's been my soapbox for a long time, Mark. And my youngest daughter, bless her, I taught her and encouraged her to do an apprenticeship. So she did an apprenticeship in social media with Tarborley Tomlin for a year. And my goodness, instead of her being saddled with that weight of debt for the rest of her life, she was actually gaining real life proper experience rather than trying to read it out of a textbook. And in my day, it was the top 10% of the population that went to university. That top 10% were going to be lawyers, doctors, etc. But you can see it right the way through. And again, you know, hospitality are struggling for staff. And in America, people celebrate front of house service, and you're not ashamed to say that you wait on a table. But in this country, people don't see that as a career opportunity. And talking to Steve Gardner-Collins, who's heading up Visit Gloucestershire, as he said, I started working on the tables and waitering and doing all the rest of it. But he said, I had a career progression, and look where he is now. He's you know, heading up Hatton Court Group and also leading on Visit Gloucestershire. So we've got to change the way that we think about this and support our children to realize they're not failures if they don't go to university, that there are other jobs that need filling.
I think the other thing here, we're blessed in Gloucestershire with so many fantastic engineering companies, manufacturing companies. You know, where are the welders and the engineers and the doers and the shakers that are going to, you know, the people that we need to keep everything going? And we're not going to have the Eastern Europeans, and we're not going to have immigration. That we do need our kids to do the work, and I hate to say it, they're not used to doing the heavy lifting. We've got a generation that we've spoiled, haven't we?
We have. I also think there's a bit of a disconnect between the world of business and our education. We still think in silos. And, you know, even with the new cyber park that's being built in Cheltenham, for example, we've been knowing about this for a long, long time. How much have they integrated that message into our education system, into STEM, to home grow our own talent? Otherwise, we're going to be in a situation where we're going to be importing the skills into Cheltenham rather than growing our own from within. So I think there's got to be less silo thinking and more cross thinking.
Well, the other thing is schools themselves, let's be honest, they're so reliant on grading nowadays that they, you know, they want as many kids to go to university as possible.
Yes.
I mean, my daughters, they were both pushed into going into university. They had to write, you know, that dreaded personal statement. And it's very difficult at 16, 18 to write a personal statement when you have no idea what you want to do. No idea. Anyway, Chris, have we got one more story then for us, please?
No, that's it for now.
Okay, great stuff. I'll go over to you, Claire. Claire, what have you picked out from the papers, please?
Well, funny enough, I was going to talk about the GCSE results, and I do get on my soapbox when it comes to education. My youngest daughter was dyslexic, so the pressure on her that she felt that she had to tick this academic box, and I still believe it's aptitude and attitude that we in business are looking for when we're recruiting, because the skills we can add. And I think it's very sad that people all fly into university, get saddled with this huge debt, second-rate universities, second-rate degrees, and they come out with this high expectation, and it's not realistic. And as we were just saying, you know, we need people to drive our lorries, to wait on our tables. And I think it's horrific that with that attitude, we've got all these jobs available now. And still, I was reading this morning on the news that Harrogate, they've got the 2 Betty's tea rooms up in Harrogate, and I think they're going to have to shut because they cannot get staff, which is terrible, absolutely terrifying.
Which actually goes back over to Chris's business, really, because the knock-on effect to the distribution and supply of food is huge. Because if restaurants can't get the staff and they're only opening 4 days a week, you know, I was trying to book into Axminster. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I was trying to book into a restaurant in Axminster, and they're only open 4 days a week. And that's what's going to happen, isn't it? They won't be able to open, which of course they're not going to be serving so much food. It will have a knock-on effect to your own business, will it, Chris?
It will. You know, we've seen a number of restaurants now, you know, shutting at lunchtime, maybe just serving in the evening, or, you know, shutting from the breakfast service because they just can't get the staff to cover the time it's needed. So, I mean, it's a big problem.
I mean, the pandemic itself has changed the way a lot of businesses work. You know, Gilman's in particular have always used to open on a Sunday. Don't open on a Sunday anymore. There's no need to. They've worked out that actually, you know, it for whatever reason, it works for them better. But yeah, I can see how it will have a fundamental change going forward. Really, really will. Okay,
I'd love to see more technical colleges and training rather than academic degrees. We've still got an imbalance there, and Claire talked about apprenticeships. We definitely need to do much more there.
I mean, it's quite amazing. You've obviously got the police training centre down in Berkeley, and what Stroud College do down there, Stroud University, Stroud College do down there is amazing. I think the Gloucester College with their new digital centre is really, you know, brilliant as well. So we're kind of getting there
slowly,
but it's a slow burn, isn't it? Okay, I'll be a little bit controversial then. Quickly, I'll ask you: do you think that Gloucestershire University moving into Debenhams is a good move? Just very quickly, Claire.
I do, because I think it revitalised the high street. Anybody that's watching will know that I keep banging on about the death of our high streets, and the only way we're going to change that is to get more life into the high street. So I think having young people in that high street can only do good.
I think it's a brilliant idea, really innovative, different, lateral thinking, and it's exactly the sort of thing we need to be doing to grow our high streets.
Yes.
Chris Creed?
Yeah, I think it just gives a greater connection between the people. I mean, you know, rather than having these campuses that are isolated, I think to have areas in towns, I think is a really good idea.
Okay, great stuff. Right, Chris Nelson, I want to just very quickly talk to you. Obviously, you're the newly elected Police and Crime Commissioner. I don't want to get too serious and everything. Is it a bigger job than you thought it was going to be?
No, I always knew it was going to be hard. It's probably the hardest and most demanding and challenging job I've ever had, but I love it. It's a huge privilege. It's a fascinating subject, the breadth of interests that the job has. It keeps me busy every single day, but I've got a budget, I've got a staff, I can make things happen, I can make a difference, and I'm passionate about it. So yeah, it's hard, but I love it.
Now, the budget, you talked about that, you've just done your budget review. I noticed that, you know, we talked about the 300 police officers. It is a little bit of a fudge, if you don't mind me saying. They're not 300 frontline officers, as your elected, you know, manifesto said. It's a real mix.
Well, the announcement that we made earlier this week was just phase one of delivering my manifesto commitment to 300 more officers. I remain wedded to that manifesto commitment. I feel honor bound to deliver it. So it's only phase one. It's taken me 3 months to get to this stage. It's you know, in some people's books, that's not long. When you talk about an announcement on 150 more police officers, 50 more police community support officers, 103 police staff, 150 special constables. Yes, I've still got another 100 officers to go to make my 300 full-time police officers, but that's phase two. Once I've sorted out phase one, then I can address that. But I think it'll be transformational for the police force. It'll make a huge difference. The constabulary is really excited about it. And I think once we get the recruit up and running and perhaps attract some of these youngsters that we've just been talking about, who've just done their A-levels, it'll be wonderful for the county.
Okay, and I noticed in the police review it didn't say anything about horses. We're growing the 7th Cavalry. I don't know if you know, guys, but we've got 6 police horses. It costs an absolute fortune. What's your view on the horses, Chris? Just very quickly.
Me again, or the other?
Yeah, you. So yeah. Sorry.
And we're still studying the horses issue. I sent the team away to study sponsorship and mutual aid. And I think if we can find a bit of support from that area, horses are quite useful. You might find surprising, but it is quite useful. They are quite useful in neighbourhood policing, dealing with antisocial behaviour, which is one of my main commitments. They don't tend to be used so much these days for public order events. So I remain open-minded. I'm looking for the evidence. The jury is still out.
That's fair enough. Last question. Very, very quickly before we move on to one of the other guys. How do you think the police can actually help businesses more?
Well, I think all the recruitment that I've just talked about should really, really help. I'm also reviewing my police and crime plan, and that'll be coming out next month. And I want to concentrate on those aspects of crime that are underreported, and shoplifting and retail crime, assaults on staff, don't get the priority that I think they should. And a lot go underreported, so they're not part of the official statistics. So I think all of that manpower that I've just talked about will make a huge difference. And I also want to reach out to all the local councils. It's not just a police matter keeping our community safe. It involves everybody. And I think if we get our councils involved, the NHS, mental health, a whole range of different agencies, then I think all working together, we can make a difference. And for instance, if you look at Gloucester, the City Safe officers that walk around the streets that aren't police officers, but they're employed by the local bid within the town. It's a very good example of people working within high streets that help to keep those shops safe.
Okay, thanks ever so much. Thanks ever so much, Chris. And hopefully we'll get you back on the show on a regular basis as well. Chris Creed, let's go over to you, sir. Obviously the pandemic, Creed Foodservice, very well-known, renowned company here in the area. The pandemic must have hit you hard. What's the business like now, please?
Well, last week the first week we were actually ahead of 2019, only by 3%, but ahead of 2019. So going in the right direction. We've discussed it earlier. I think it's a perfect storm of can't get lorry drivers, can't get products into us. Hospitality are not as strong as they have been because they can't get the staff as well. So it's a difficult market to be in right now. But business is generally good. I think the customers we're working with are, working hard, to get everything back up and running. We're now starting to see. We've only had one instance so far, but one of our suppliers has gone bust. So companies that actually have made it through the last 18 months, finances are really stretching some of those now, and I think that there may be that we start to see some of that happening as well.
Do you feel like we're walking into or driving into a perfect storm here, because a lot of these companies are heavily geared, they own a lot of money, and that's if they don't start making the money up now as the taxes further come to roost, the government wants their grants back. And of course,
I think you're right. I think that there's quite possibly that. I think things are as positive as they can be at the moment. And I think as a business, we're very positive with our people and the way it's going. I just wonder whether, what's around the corner. I mean, I read an article, I think yesterday about, is the AstraZeneca, how long is that effective for? So, if we don't get this booster program in place, are we going to find a rise of COVID back during the winter? Do we risk another lockdown? And I think for a lot of businesses, that would finish them off. So, there are still, we're very positive about the future, but I think there is still an amount of uncertainty there.
Okay, thanks so much. One of the things that really astounds me is in your sector is the innovation of food and the cooking process nowadays. Last time we spoke, you were telling me about boiled eggs. And can you explain? Sorry, can you explain about the boiled eggs? They all come in a big tube nowadays, guys.
I think you were slightly too fascinated about this, Mark, but we'll go with it. You can buy a product now which basically is a long roll. And it's made for making sandwiches, so it's basically consistent all the way through. So you get egg yolk, and the white around it in a long roll. So it's a manufactured product that is used in sandwich making and such like.
Fantastic. And poached eggs as well. They pre-cook poached eggs for other companies. So we're getting bills and breaks. I won't say bills, but some other companies.
I'm not sure if that, but
it's
a chilled product. It's a chilled product that you buy in, and it just takes 1 minute to regenerate. Yeah.
So it's already cooked, pre-cooked. Stick it in boiling water, and it's a perfect poached egg each time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love eggs.
Better than a slop I sometimes put out there. Thanks
I think the shocking statistic that I heard was there are more people employed in making sandwiches in the UK than are actually employed in agriculture.
I think that says everything about this country.
It does, doesn't it?
Especially as a lot of the newspapers are really worried about the sale of our aviation and military might to the Americans and to foreign investors. So anyway, let's go over to you, Claire. You're obviously you're an ambassador for Happerley. What is Happerley?
Well, Happerley is just about truth and transparency, so that when any of us go into a restaurant or a butcher's or wherever, and Chris Creed has been working with us on this, it's about transparency and honesty. That's it. It's enabling a consumer to make an informed decision. So when you're there, you might look at 2 packs of sausages and think that's more expensive, but if you scan it with your phone, look at using the QR code, you can then decide whether you pay that little bit more to buy local, support a local farmer, and learn about where that food has come from, rather than something that may not be what you think it is. And many people will be absolutely shocked when they see what's happening in terms of farming in Australia, and a lot of our farmers are just not being able to tell their story and can't trade on a level playing field, and that's really unfortunate, because one of the good things that came out of COVID, I think, is that people are starting to question their food from the health and well-being side as well. And I think there's a huge upturn in the farm shops and local farmers markets, and people are starting to think about what they're eating. And Chris was talking earlier about the importance, Chris Creed, about health, and you are what you eat at the end of the day. So that's why I'm passionate again about, educating our youngsters about food and teaching them to cook. I mean, it's just crazy that these children are they don't have home economics in the classrooms anymore. And I went to the food lecture in the city 2 years ago, and Princess Anne was speaking, and she said, no wonder there's a shortage in chefs, because we don't have home economics in our schools. Children aren't getting hands-on with their food so much, so thinking about going to be a chef isn't really on the radar. So yet again, we've gone full circle. We've come back to school as an education, but it's interesting.
But the truth of the matter is, a lot of parents don't know how to cook properly. They don't know about food hygiene properly, and they do cook, they manage to give themselves food poisoning. There's a serious problem there.
Big problem.
You're dead right. We had Adam Henson. I interviewed Adam Henson a little while ago, and obviously the farmer and TV personality or TV guy, and he was on about glorified chicken coming over from America. He was really, really passionate about that. And you're right. I think the thing about COVID is that lots of people shopped at their delis, and they really appreciated great food. Now, the other thing you're doing is that you're on the board of Cheltenham Chamber of Commerce as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that? We haven't got very much time, so
very, very quickly. So I sit on the board of Cheltenham Chamber, representing hospitality and tourism. I'm very passionate about visitor economy, and I'm just about to start some work now. The Chamber is sort of going to be the conduit, but Cheltenham Council have got No Child Should Be Left Behind. So they've put a pot of money to help children that have been affected through COVID with their education to help them catch up. So I'm working with a charity called Ambition that are based down in the city, and that is funded by some of the financial institutions, Credit Suisse, etc., because they're part of their CSR and giving back is to have a team that go into our most deprived schools. So we'll be doing this in Cheltenham to start with, and we've got some of the most deprived schools, children over 50% that are having free school meals, and improving the literacy. So their teachers from Ambition will go in and teach the teachers, because sadly the schools that have the most challenges, they don't retain the staff don't get the training they need for the special needs. So it's just a continuous problem. So if we can give them the fishing rod rather than the fish, because throwing money at them isn't necessarily the answer, but if we can upskill the teachers to do a better job. And the 3 schools they've done work with in London have improved literacy by 100%. So I'm quite excited that we're in a position at Cheltenham Chamber to be that conduit to bring public sector funding, working with the charity to do the delivery. And we at the Chamber will be working with the businesses and saying, come on, let's all do our bit now. As you say, you can't sit back and expect everybody else to do it for us. We've all got to do our bit. So it's not just about the money, it's about volunteering and helping some of the academies and what have you. So yeah, exciting.
Absolutely fantastic, yeah, and please keep us posted. And of course,
yes,
here at Punchline, we'll do our best to
thank you.
With that goes without saying, Claire. And it's great to see you again. By the
Great.
way,
Thank
let's
you.
quickly go through what's caught your eye in Punchline. Go back over to Chris Nelson. Chris, what's caught your eye in this week's Punch, please?
Well, as ever, Punchline does all sorts of interesting stories, Mark. But the story that caught my eye was the courier fraud. 5 people charged. They worked out of London to scam elderly people here in the county and other counties. And our serious and organised crime unit in the constabulary did a brilliant bit of detective work to catch these guys. And there's hundreds of thousands of pounds that have been lost in these scams. It's a growing problem. So I thought that work was fantastic and a good news story.
Thanks very much, Chris. Chris Creed, what's caught your eye in this week's Punch, please?
There was a couple of articles really, and I think probably, you know, we're banging the same drum. The one was about the uncertain future of hospitality, which we've kind of already discussed. And actually the other one focuses on what Claire was just talking about, and it's the focus on national food strategy and about the standards in farming. And I think that Claire's absolutely right. It's really, really important. The standards we have in this country are far higher than a lot of other countries. And I think focusing on, you know, using British farmers and British produce, I think is a really, really important one.
Okay, thanks very much. And Claire, what's caught your eye in this week?
Well, I was just thrilled that you hung out to dry, shall I say, on August the 12th, the story about the farmer who's been brought up and held to account for allowing sheep to starve. But what shocked me was there was a history and he was stopped from having cattle, and yet he was allowed to continue to have sheep, and that just seemed crazy to me. I mean, if they've stepped over the line and they can't follow the basic animal husbandry, then have no animals. I'm sorry, but it doesn't give our farmers the best publicity. But hanging them out to dry and showing that we are on it, I think is really important, because it's just not acceptable.
Well, thanks very much.
That's quite rare though, isn't it? I mean, I think
it's
standards
very,
generally
very
are high.
rare, Chris, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. We've got to shout out about all the great animal welfare and how well we are, how good we are in this country at looking after our animals. Our farming's exceptional, but people like that, just take them out. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much for mentioning that. The story I'd just like to mention actually was one about container prices that ran early in the week, a serious impact on the import costs. A container that used to cost £4,000 has now risen to £13,000, and we interviewed quite a few people about that and the knock-on effect to their business. And then the other story I'd like to mention is the sort of demise of Hillside Brewery was to close as well. They decided to call it a day. Great business, really, really nice guys. We wish them all the very best for the future. Thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks. Hopefully we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks for